Hey guys, Rushy here and welcome back to another video. As you may know, if you watched the first video I made this year, I actually ended up catching COVID-19 for the first time ever, late last year around Christmas time. So that's going to be the topic of this video. I'm going to let you know my thoughts on the virus itself, in terms of how I think it came about, how serious I think it is. I'm going to let you know how I managed to avoid catching it for almost 4 years. I'm also going to let you know how I ended up catching it. And most importantly, I'm going to let you know survival tips on how to deal with the virus if you do get infected. And I'm also going to try and give advice in terms of how you can live around COVID after catching the virus. And I'm also going to give my thoughts and opinions on the positive and negative effects of the COVID-19 vaccines. And I'm going to try and provide some general information about the virus in general. So starting with summarising the virus itself. So COVID-19, also known as coronavirus, is a modern virus that came out at the very end of 2019, but mainly started spreading in 2020. It can be a deadly virus. That's the main way COVID kills you, by affecting your breathing. From my understanding, those who are most vulnerable to the virus are the elderly and people with underlying health conditions. However, it has also been known to kill young people. This virus has created a pandemic because it has spread throughout the world. Apparently, it originated in China, and its exact origins of how it came about are unconfirmed. The main theory is that it was transferred from animals, bats I believe, and transferred to humans through humans eating bats. There is another theory, it is also a man-made virus. So yes, this virus caused huge amounts of chaos throughout the world, and it caused many countries to go into lockdowns. It also caused people to wear protective equipment to try and reduce the chances of catching the virus and improve cleanliness levels. It spurred on several companies to create vaccines for the virus. It's hard to believe, but it's been 4 years now since that virus came about. So if you don't already know, I am based in the UK, and in Britain, at the time of making this video, over 233,000 people have died with COVID. I first remember hearing about the virus being on the news in late January of 2020. By February, I was actively trying to minimise my chances of catching the virus. In the UK, we went into lockdown about exactly 4 years ago, mid-March sometime. So yes, for me personally, ever since I first began hearing about the virus, I took it very seriously. I've always believed it to be real and a threat and a danger. And I think that's what caused me to avoid catching the virus for so long, because I minimised how often I went in public, and I also took preventative measures to reduce my chances of catching the virus, such as sanitising my hands, also wearing face masks, maintaining a safe distance from people, only making essential journeys, and sanitising products I bought or borrowed off people. And this continued throughout 2020 until I got my first vaccine in 2021. I decided to get the vaccine, even though I'm young, because I do have a weak immune system. And also I wanted to reduce my chance of catching the virus, and I also wanted to reduce my chances of spreading the virus, which I thought these vaccines would provide. I had 3 courses, 2 in 2021 and 1 booster in early 2022, and I haven't had another vaccine since. So how did I manage to end up catching the virus after managing to avoid it for so long? To me, COVID became less of a risk, and I began to live more freely again by going out more often, no longer wearing face masks and protection in that way, no longer sanitising products, although I used to continue to sanitise my hands. I managed to avoid catching it right up until about a week before Christmas last year. I actually caught it off a family member. My mother was the first one to catch it in our family. She then passed it on to me, and then I passed it on to my dad. And we found out there are two ways my mum could have caught it, and they were from two separate interactions with people she knew. She met two friends whilst out and about going shopping, and they both gave her a hug. And about a few days after those interactions, she became ill with COVID. So that's how we believe she caught COVID, by close contact with one of her friends. And we're not sure which of the two women, because neither seemed to have symptoms, or if they did, they didn't let us know. And my mother started getting symptoms straight away, but we thought it was a cold or flu because of the time of year being winter, and we'd almost forgotten completely about COVID at this time. But then when I caught COVID, within the first day or two, I thought it might be something more serious than a cold or flu, because I had felt worse than I'd ever felt before. And I recently heard on the news that COVID began spreading again, and it spreads more during winter periods. So I got tested with one of my test kits that I saved from my time in university, and it was positive. So that was when we found out we all had COVID. Yes, it was a shock and quite scary too. And in terms of how dangerous and serious COVID is as a virus, well, it's the worst thing I've ever been infected with compared to influenza, cold, or any other type of infection I've had. COVID-19 is the worst infection I've ever caught. So what were my symptoms of COVID-19? I began having a dry cough, feeling quite weak and ill. I had a very high temperature, the highest temperature I ever had. I lost my sense of taste, and my sense of smell had been dramatically altered. And I also had a sore throat. And I could also feel like my body was trying to fight off this infection with everything it had. And it was taking a lot of effort to do so. Thankfully, my breathing wasn't affected, and I had the virus, and I had symptoms of the virus for 3 weeks in total. The first 3 days were the worst, when I was feeling the most ill. It took 1 week until I started feeling better, but it wasn't until the third week that I felt that I'd fully recovered from the virus. Thankfully, I have no long-lasting side effects of COVID, so thankfully I don't have what's known as long COVID. However, it did take about a month for my sense of smell to be restored, which was the last thing that came back to normal. So yes, from my experience of catching COVID, it is real, it is a real virus, and it is a serious virus. So, how did I manage to survive catching COVID, and how did I get through it? Well, it wasn't easy, but my best advice for anyone who has caught COVID is to rest, because that's what I'd done immediately. Luckily, I had my parents who caught it as well, and we all relied on each other and supported each other. I work as my mother's carer, so I didn't need to attend anywhere or go anywhere, so I had the luxury to stay at home. And I rested for the first week, lying in bed most of every day. I also improved my diet. I began drinking lots more water, which definitely helped. And of course, because it affected my sense of smell and taste, I no longer felt as hungry as I did before. So I ate less, but I still made sure I had 3 main meals a day. Another survival tip is, because COVID can affect your breathing, try and concentrate on breathing as much as possible. I relaxed, I laid in bed and let my body try to fight off this infection, but I also made sure I had plenty of air, and I concentrated on breathing. I also took some medication which helped, because with me, my main symptom of COVID was a very high temperature. I felt I was burning up completely at one point, the highest temperature I've ever had. So I took paracetamol tablets, but I didn't abuse them. I took one at one point, and then I took two at a separate point with water, and it did slightly bring down my temperature, but I didn't want to abuse the medication in case the virus became immune to it. So I just appreciated what effect it had on me. And my final piece of advice is to understand it will take time to get better and don't give up. I was ill for over a week before I started seeing significant signs of improvement, and early on I thought I was never going to feel better, but I realised then that this is a long process and I just need to get through it day by day and not to give up. I can completely understand how this virus has killed people because of how exhausted your body gets trying to fight it off and trying to breathe as well, especially for those who are elderly and have health conditions. So understand it will take a while to feel better, and relax as much as possible and don't give up and keep fighting and keep focus on trying to survive basically, and keep breathing, keep hydrated, take medication if necessary, but make sure you do your research on the medication first. Make sure you take time out to relax, because that has also been assigned to reduce long lasting effects of COVID and the chance of having long COVID. And if you become too unwell, call 999 and go into hospital. The best treatment I've heard is ventilators providing you with assistance breathing. I wouldn't wish this virus on anyone. So one thing I highly stress, if you do catch COVID, stay at home until you either test negative or are feeling significantly better, or if you have to leave home for emergencies, make sure you wear protective equipment, because protective equipment such as face masks can protect other people from catching COVID from you. So that's one thing to remember. It can prevent you catching COVID. It can also prevent you from spreading it to other people. So I think the main reason I survived the virus is because of my age, and I am relatively healthy, but not completely healthy. And I also think the vaccine I took has an impact. So now moving on to my thoughts on the effectiveness of the vaccines. Well, I took 2 main vaccines and a booster vaccine. I have 3 vaccines available where I am in the UK. They are the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, and the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And I had the Pfizer vaccine 2 years and a year before I caught the virus. So because that length of time had elapsed, obviously they weren't as effective as if I would have caught virus not long after catching the vaccine. I think they did help, but not significantly and not as much as advertised. I still ended up catching the virus and I still ended up unwell. That's me personally speaking about the Pfizer vaccine. However, news has since come about that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was also not as effective as was initially advertised and made out. But at the same time, I didn't get any negative long-term side effects from the vaccine. I felt ill for the first day after having the vaccine, but after that I felt normal and had no long-term side effects from any of the 3 vaccines I took. However, in rare cases, there have been known to have been some long-lasting side effects from having the vaccine. There has been a small number of deaths linked to vaccines. However, there's also been a significant amount of deaths linked to COVID itself. So, would I recommend you take a vaccine? I'd say it's completely up to you. You just got to weigh the pros and the cons of how likely you are to catch COVID, how ill you are likely to be with COVID, and the side effects of the vaccine. I'm not condemning them, saying that you shouldn't take them, but I'm not saying that you should either. I think it's a personal choice. You just have to weigh up the pros and the cons and the risks and justify the effectiveness of the vaccine to any side effects of the vaccine. And, understand that you can't spend your entire life at home. You will always be at risk of catching something, but you've got to weigh up the pros and the cons and the risks of living with COVID. And remember, just because COVID isn't in the headlines anymore, it is still spreading. And you can live with COVID, but always have it in the back of your mind that you could catch COVID or another virus, because I strongly believe there will be other viruses in the future that will either be man-made or perhaps spread from animals or in a natural way. Manage your life and risk assess your life. Still try and enjoy life as much as possible, but don't be too carefree, and always have it in the back of your mind that you could catch a virus. Maintain your hygiene levels and believe that the virus is real, because in my opinion, I've caught it myself, so I know now, but even before I caught it, I knew that something like this could not be faked. In terms of the media, they wouldn't have the capacity to do so, and the real stories I've heard of people catching it as well, rest assured it is not fake. It is real. And if you do hear about virus spreading on the news, take it seriously. And once you have caught it, you are less likely to catch it again, and you are better equipped to deal with it again. And remember, it affects everyone differently. Some people, they aren't very affected by COVID. Others are severely affected by it, and others have unfortunately died of it. How it can affect you might be different to how it can affect someone else. And there are also different strains of COVID, different variants of it, mutations of the virus, and some are more serious than others. And I think I caught a very serious mutation of it. Even though most people who catch COVID survive from COVID, because so many people have caught COVID, millions across the world, maybe into billions now, it has resulted in a significant death toll of over 1 million people worldwide. And one thing that's also changed my mind since catching the virus, from my experience and symptoms of the virus, is where I think it came from. I believe COVID-19 was manufactured, a human-made virus, and I'm not sure of its origin. I'm keeping an open mind. I'm thinking it could have possibly been made by the Chinese, but it could have also been made by another nation set to be spread from China. And the reason I believe this is because how it affected my sense of smell. I've never experienced it before. It made things smell so artificial, and the way it affected my sense of smell, it was almost like it artificially done so, like not in a natural way. It didn't completely stop my sense of smell, but it just changed it, and things smelt completely different to normal. And because it affected it in such a way that I think is artificial, I believe it was designed to do this. And I believe certain people have strong motives to create a man-made virus, because I think a virus is the easiest way to kill as many people as possible, because it can cross boundaries, cross borders into multiple countries, any country, and spread from person to person without them even realising. And I'd also like to finish in terms of how I believe the UK dealt with COVID. I believe the UK government didn't deal with COVID as well as they should have done, considering we are supposed to be a wealthy, developed country. I believe we went into lockdown too late, and there wasn't enough professional, serious advice from the government about the virus in the early days, and I think the UK government should have handled the virus and could have handled the virus better. It is unprecedented, and any virus such as COVID is very serious, and unfortunately it is almost guaranteed some people will die, but we can try and limit that as much as possible, and that is something I think the UK government didn't do. Some people, general public, didn't help themselves by not believing in the virus and continuing as normal, but I believe the government should have done more to limit the spread of COVID. I'm also glad there is an inquest going on in the UK into how the government managed COVID, and I think there should also be an investigation to how COVID was created, because I believe it is a human-made virus. And it might be a natural virus, which we do have to look out for, because there have been natural viruses in the past, but in my opinion, I believe it is human-made. Okay, so that concludes this video, guys. This has been a rather serious video I've made for this month, but I felt it is necessary, and there are lots of people who would still be alive now if COVID didn't exist. So I'd like to dedicate this video to those people, and I hope they are all resting in peace. And if you know someone or have a loved one who died from COVID, you have my complete sympathies. And if you have caught COVID in the past, I completely understand what you're going through, and I congratulate you on surviving it, because it isn't easy. And if this video helps just one person deal with COVID, then I will be satisfied, and the more it helps, the better, because I think information is very useful in terms of dealing with anything the more educated you are on it, the better you are at dealing with it. And I hope any information I have in this video has helped. And I admit I don't know everything about it myself. So if you think there are any other advice in terms of dealing with COVID or a virus in general, or any other information about COVID, and also in terms of the vaccines, any more information on any of the vaccines developed, because there were more than 3, feel free to let me know more information about the vaccines below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching this video. I am continuing on my current schedule of uploading 1 video every month. I hope you all have a happy Easter, and I hope to see you all next month in my next video. Take care.